When others travel to the end of the world, they either live in a zombie-like city or lack food and clothing. But Sisi's family seems to have luck in the end of the world. Sisi dreamed of an insect plague, and when she woke up she dragged her rich parents to stock up on supplies. The supermarket was emptied by them, and the express addresses were written in all kinds of colors. The house instantly became a warehouse for supplies. They even stocked up 1,000 air fryers, and the only thing left was to move the supermarket back home. The insect plague came suddenly. Meteorites carrying alien insect eggs hit the earth. The insects exploded everywhere like popcorn, and they grew bigger after biting people. It's outrageous. But once Sisi closed the door of her house and hid in the large flat on the 27th floor, eating snail noodles and watching TV series, the chaos outside had nothing to do with them. During this period, many strange things happened. The uncle on the 5th floor wanted to stay with him for 100 yuan, but Sisi's dad directly retorted, "Not even if you offer 10,000. Someone in the opposite building threw fireballs and used his own grandmother as a meat shield, which made Sisi's family stunned. Later, they found the trace of the insect king and wanted to lead it to a pond to freeze it. But the insects in the water became even more crazy. The scene was even more exciting than a horror movie. Fortunately, the country has not given up on us. Drones are spreading powder, and soldiers are driving modified cars and holding guns to shoot big bugs. The protective suits are shining in the sun. So cool. Although the insects have not been eliminated, Sisi's family firmly believes that good days are coming soon. In this insect-infested apocalypse, Sisi's family successfully lived a lying flat, apocalyptic life by hoarding goods and being optimistic. It's so cool. The meteorite that fell that day brought with it a large number of alien creatures. The ground was crawling with dense insects. Suddenly, a giant insect appeared in the distance and was walking towards this side. This scene woke Sisi up suddenly from her dream. The scene in the dream made her feel unbearable fear, and even her intensive phobia was triggered. Since a month ago, Sisi has had recurring nightmares about an insect plague outbreak. According to the time in the dream, a meteorite will fall next week. At first, everyone thought it was just a beautiful meteor shower, until meteorites fell to the ground and destroyed buildings. Scientists discovered that the meteorite brought alien insect eggs. Just 5 days later, the insect plague broke out. She didn't believe it at first. After all, it was just a dream. However, when she turned on the TV and saw the news that experts predicted the meteor shower, she was surprised to find that the predicted time was exactly the same as the time in her dream. Realizing that this was not just a dream, she decided to take action. According to the dream, her home was not damaged by the meteorite, so the insect plague here would break out a little later. Her home was on the 27th floor, and if the pipes were tightly sealed, it would be difficult for the insects to get up. However, what worried her most was still the giant bug. The time in the dream showed that the disaster would happen in 2 years, so she could think about this problem later. Fortunately, she has a wealthy father, and the large flat at home is large enough to store supplies, and they also have enough funds to deal with the challenges that lie ahead. After deciding to take action, the first thing she did was to call her parents home. Her mother was active and had read too much apocalyptic theories in recent years, so she was easily convinced by such things. However, her father was calm and assured her that it would be challenging. Unexpectedly, her father believed her immediately after hearing what she said. In fact, she has had a feeling these past few days that something big is going to happen. Now that you said this, she feels relieved. My father has always trusted his intuition. Things went smoothly, and the next step was to prepare supplies. Her father transferred 2 million to her without hesitation so that she could buy food and other necessities. Since her father was in the construction industry, it was not easy to ask employees to buy a large amount of food all of a sudden. She knew her father would take care of the rest, so she drove to a warehouse supermarket without further delay. At the same time, she also placed orders on Taobao and quickly purchased many daily necessities: 6 bags of snail noodles times 50 large bags, 3 bags of nanchang mixed noodles times 50 boxes, 5 bags of red oil noodles times 50 large bags, 10 boxes of hand-torn bread, 10 bags of black sesame paste, 10 boxes of meat floss cakes, and 20 bags of adult milk powder. She deliberately chose addresses in nearby cities to place orders for these products, and even filled in different addresses to cover up her tracks. Considering that there might be problems with express delivery, she decided to go to the supermarket in person to buy necessities such as rice and flour. The car she drove today was a small truck used by workers in her father's company to transport materials. The car was filled with various supplies: 20 kg times 200 bags of rice, 20 kg times 200 bags of flour, 24 bags of instant noodles times 20 boxes, 12 bottles times 50 packs of mineral water, 12 bottles times 5 boxes of yogurt, 5 large bags of mushrooms, 20 bags of tofu skin, 60 bags of salt, and 12 bottles times 30 boxes of soy sauce. Since she had never experienced a disaster, she forgot what else she needed. Fortunately, These supplies almost filled the carriage. As she watched the staff loading the supplies onto the truck, she suddenly realized, "Oh no, I forgot to ask my father to order water." She quickly sent a message to tell her father about the order. Her father was still very reliable and wrote back to tell her that he had ordered 200 barrels of water and would continue to order tomorrow. Fortunately, her father was not only rich, but also had a large enough space at home. He also had a common problem among rich people: fear of death. All the facilities in his home had the highest security factor. In the evening, inspired by countless apocalyptic novels, her mother reminded her that she had purchased too few supplies. She mentioned that the family must install a solar power generation device as soon as possible, because resources such as gas will definitely be exhausted quickly, and self-sufficiency in electricity is crucial. The next morning, she drove straight to the supermarket again and replenished many urgently needed supplies. She bought 10 pressure cookers, 10 air fryers, 10 small pots, 10 electric cookers, and 2 heaters. In order to deal with abnormal weather, especially insect outbreaks, she also prepared 30 boxes of hot packs and cooling patches, 10 thick quilts, 10 thin quilts, 2,000 sets of disposable underwear, 20 large towels. Although I was not sure what they were used for, I bought them anyway. 10 sets of warm clothes per person, and other necessities such as laundry detergent, dishwashing liquid, vinegar, and oil. Before checking out, she suddenly thought, since it is the end of the insect plague, how can there be less pesticides? Although the pesticides are toxic, she still decided to buy 20 boxes first. The advantage of a warehouse-type supermarket is that no matter how much you buy, no one will look at you strangely. As for meat, my family discussed and decided not to buy a freezer because it takes up too much space. What should we put in the freezer after eating meat? So her father decided to buy more bacon, cured meat, sausage, luncheon meat, and canned food. The house was large enough to accommodate all the supplies. In order to consider the load-bearing problem, her father dispersed the water in different rooms and piled it up in rows. She plans to buy 2019 barrels of water, as well as various beverages and mineral water. After sending these supplies home, she starts buying snacks. 50 bags of potato chips, 50 bags of spicy strips, several boxes of chocolate, 100 bags of melon seeds, and some snacks such as instant noodles, Cheerios, and Oreos. Suddenly remembering that she hadn't bought sanitary napkins and tissues, she quickly swept the entire shelf and took away all the sanitary napkins and tissues. When she passed by the canned food area, she suddenly realized that the shelf life of canned fruit was as long as 540 days, so she immediately called the manager. She bought 20 boxes of the latest date oranges, apples, yellow peaches, oolong peaches, and canned pepa. Although she felt that these supplies were still not enough, she decided to continue to replenish them tomorrow. Today, she mainly went to buy groceries and medicines. Although the epidemic is over and many medicines can be easily bought, the medicines are still left to her father because she lacks knowledge about them. Recently, her mother has been buying all kinds of electronic products almost crazily. After returning home, she began to download TV series, movies, and variety shows on major applications in turn. The solar panels at home have been installed. This is the advantage of having money, and the speed is very fast. Although she didn't specifically mention the insect's sensitivity to sound in her dream, she still did some sound insulation just to be on the safe side. She had done it once when she renovated her house, and this time she was mainly checking for any missed parts, so the process was quick. She bought 1,000 cabbages, 5 large bags of potatoes, 2 large bags of onions, 15 boxes of apples, 10 boxes of pears, and 15 boxes of oranges. As for pork, mutton, and beef, she didn't know much about them and didn't know how much the refrigerator at home could hold, so she left it to her mother. She also bought various seeds and nutrient soil, and there are many foam boxes at home. When passing by the supermarket, she suddenly remembered that she had not bought self-heating rice, so she ran in and bought 150 boxes of self-heating rice of different flavors and 100 boxes of self-heating hot pot. Although her family was not short of money, she still bought some cigarettes and alcohol, thinking that she would need them in case they came in handy. After returning home, the next task was left to her parents, especially her mother. She was familiar with apocalyptic novels and had a talent for stockpiling. She took the lead because she had other things to do, preparing weapons. Although she didn't know which weapons were effective against bugs, what if? Her mother also bought a lot of cat litter. Through the unremitting efforts of her parents, the house was filled with supplies except for the sleeping area. The expert on TV was announcing, according to the forecast, there will be a meteor shower tomorrow that happens once in a century. The family of 3 was silent for a moment, and she said, "Mom and Dad, they should not go out from today." Just like in her dream, everyone was looking forward to the meteor shower, and people were discussing the best viewing locations online. However, what really came was the precursor to the end of the insect plague, a meteorite attack. Although she saw her home was a safe place in her dream, she was still afraid when the meteorite fell and caused a fire. This was the prelude to the end of the world. The meteorite attack did not last long, but the disaster it brought was extremely serious. The reporters on TV reported quickly that this was a global disaster. After the meteorite was over, she felt calmer and started to cook with her mother. It was late autumn and early winter, and the meteorite might have made her feel a little cold. On the third day after the meteorite attack, experts reminded residents not to touch the meteorites and to report any meteorite fragments in a timely manner and have them handled by a designated person. When she saw the news, she guessed that experts should have discovered that the meteorite carried a large number of insect eggs, but they may not have said it out loud for fear of causing panic. She didn't understand these policies, but she knew that on the fifth day after the meteorite attack, the property staff of the community wore protective clothing and went door to door to ask if anyone was injured and said they would provide free treatment. The staff emphasized that there was no need to open the door, just answer directly. The three of them had not left the house since the day before the meteorite hit, so naturally they had no wounds on their bodies. After her father answered, the group left quickly. Afterwards, she proposed a hypothesis to her parents. Is it possible that those insects can crawl into the wounds on the human body surface and reproduce, turning people into the mother of the insects? This hypothesis was so disgusting that her family couldn't eat. On the seventh day after the meteorite hit, she was observing with a telescope when she suddenly discovered a strange person who was staggering and looked like he was drunk. Soon, the security guard in protective clothing stepped forward and grabbed the man, seeming to say something. Suddenly, the man became furious and shook off the security guard's hand. He probably took a few steps back due to inertia. Then, he fell to the ground and began to shake abnormally. Then, something terrible happened. With a loud bang, the man exploded and turned into countless insects. She was shocked and called her parents to come over to see, only to see that the bugs quickly gathered on the security guard in protective clothing. These bugs were all black, densely packed, in a huge black mass. The security guard looked extremely painful, his body twisting constantly. After a while, the bugs dispersed, leaving behind the security guard whose body had been bitten to pieces. Her father had called her attention to the fact that the bugs seemed to grow larger after biting people, and she looked closely and saw that it was true. She had originally planned to discuss the issue of garbage disposal today, but she was so shocked by the horrific scene in front of her that she almost vomited her breakfast. Compared to zombies, she would rather face zombies than see these disgusting things. In the past few days, the experts on TV have remained silent about these insects and have only been repeating that this disaster is a catastrophe for all mankind. Since the fifth night after the meteorite hit, there has been no update in the reports of those experts. It was cold, really too cold. After waking up from the cold, she took out her cell phone and saw that the temperature was already below zero. Today was only the 10th day of the insect plague, and it was still late autumn. She quickly turned on the air conditioner and knocked on her parents' door. "Mom and Dad, get up. The temperature has dropped." After waking up her parents, she immediately took out a few hot packs and gave them to each of them. She also took out the thick blanket she had bought earlier. When she went back to sleep, her father suddenly said, "I feel like the weather will get colder." She thought his words were a bit nonsense as the weather was obviously cold enough. The next morning, when she woke up, she found that the ground was still covered with dense insects. These insects were everywhere, and the walls outside the lower floors were full of them. They seemed to be climbing up, but they fell down again. Seeing this, she hurriedly asked her mother to spray more insecticide near the sewer pipes at home. Although it was choking, it was better than letting the insects crawl up. At this moment, an uncle who lived on the 5th floor suddenly sent a message to her father, saying that his house was on a too low floor and he saw bugs crawling all over the outside and felt unsafe. He wanted to come and live with them and offered to pay 100 yuan a day. Her father's face darkened when he heard this. He responded coldly, "How do you explain that there are so many things at home? Besides, do you dare to let anyone in under such circumstances? Dad, this is really humiliating. Even if you stay in a hotel, it can't be 100 yuan a day, right?" Her father decisively replied, "Don't worry, even if it's 10,000 a day, she will definitely not agree." Then he replied to the uncle, "I'm so sorry, they are in the capital." Seeing that she looked unhappy, her father added, "Don't worry, she and your mother are not soft-hearted people. If they were always soft-hearted, how could they build the company?" On the 11th day after the meteorite struck, the garbage at home really needed to be cleaned up. When the three of them were discussing on the balcony, they happened to see someone in the building opposite starting to throw garbage. At first, only one household threw out garbage, and then almost all high-rise buildings began to throw out garbage. Seeing this, she and her mother looked at each other. Her mother asked, Sisi, can these insects fly? She replied, yes, but not high, because they are too heavy. Got it. She and her mother quickly picked up the trash and walked to the other balcony. The other side faced the artificial lake, and there was a building in the distance. In the end times, it is necessary to avoid contact with people. After they threw away the garbage, her father told them that the internet was disconnected. She asked him how he found out, and he said it was because the game could not be played. In the afternoon, a fireball suddenly fell from one floor of their building, and the insects on the ground seemed to be dispersed a little. Then, she heard screams. 10 minutes later, an older woman came out of the building. She walked a little unsteadily and was covered with a thick quilt. The most important thing was that the quilt was on fire. The woman seemed to be walking towards the place where there were many insects regardless of everything. The insects retreated for a moment and then pounced on her again. Then, 3 more people came out of the building, who looked like a couple with a child. The child called out "Grandma" to the woman covered in the fire blanket, and then the woman hurriedly took the child and ran away. When the bug was about to catch up with the couple and the child, the grandmother suddenly looked in the direction they were running, then threw herself to the ground without hesitation, lay down, and dispersed the flames on her body. Through the telescope, she saw her full head of silver hair. In just a moment, Grandma was overwhelmed by bugs. This scene made her heart sink. In the end times, many people are not used to hoarding food. When the food at home is exhausted, they have to rush out to find food. But there are man-eating bugs outside, so do the elderly at home become meat shields? After reading all this, the 3 of them fell silent. After a long time, her mother spoke up. Isn't this because you read too many novels? You think the country will establish a safe zone, and that there are no bugs in the safe zone, so you don't use your brain to think about it. If there really is a safe zone, everyone would be notified via drone or radio. They rushed out like this, simply courting death. They even dragged the elderly in their family out to take the blame. This incident made them all feel uncomfortable, but they were powerless and unable to rescue. The group of insects that had eaten human flesh and blood seemed to have become darker, and the black was glowing. In the afternoon, there were also a few families going out, but none of them were as crazy as the family in the morning. On the 17th day after the meteorite attack, the insect plague seemed to have some advantages compared to the threat of zombies. At least there was no need to worry about a group of criminals suddenly appearing. It is noteworthy that these insects no longer seem to be afraid of fire. At first, some people tried to use fire to drive away the insects, but it was not very effective. Even those insects that had eaten human flesh and blood were visibly enlarged, but this change was not frightening. After observing for a few days, she found that these bugs were not the same as described in the novel. They didn't seem to eat everything. At least they were not interested in things like buildings. They have a great desire for flesh and blood. As long as there is a living thing on the ground, cats, dogs, and even the original insects on the earth cannot escape their devouring. Because it was an insect plague, many people were isolated in their own little world, and they had fewer worries. Their family didn't arrange any night watches, mainly because the weather was too cold. Although it was early winter, the temperature was surprisingly low, and she had to wrap herself in several layers of clothes to endure it. In addition, the power outage in the community began on an unknown day during the insect infestation. They didn't notice it at first. After all, the solar installations were fairly useful, but they soon discovered that the lights in the neighborhood suddenly went out at night, with only the solar streetlights still on. Dad said, "Hey, didn't she realize that these insects are attracted to light?" He tried the balcony light that was not connected to the solar panel, and it obviously didn't work. So he concluded, the power is out. Her mother quickly turned off the lights and closed the curtains. Even though there are bugs, you don't have to worry about people bothering you, but you still have to be careful. She and her father nodded in agreement. This afternoon, several drones came from nowhere. They didn't shout or drop any supplies. They just flew around a few times and then left. When the drone flew over, a senior resident in the apartment building directly opposite opened the window and shouted, "Can you arrange a rescue quickly? There's no food at home." Then he immediately closed the window. On the 29th day of the insect plague, drones occasionally flew over, bringing food. However, the food was not dropped on the ground, but on the top floor. The building they live in also received it, but the family still has enough food, so there is no need to take risks for such a small amount. The weather has been bad these days. It is gloomy, and the solar panels can't store much electricity. It was at this time that she realized that her mother was really well prepared. She bought alcohol blocks and an alcohol stove. Anyway, there was nothing her mother hadn't bought, except for what she couldn't think of. At noon, the family gathered together to eat noodles cooked in an alcohol pot, with 3 boiled eggs thrown in. Although there were fresh eggs at home, her father said that these eggs were to be used to make dumplings. She really couldn't understand her father's obsession with dumplings, especially that he would add eggs to any dumplings. It was particularly cold that day. After eating a bowl of noodles, she at least felt a little warmer. There was no other major change. She stuck all her body with hot packs. After the insect plague broke out, their family had started to cook as much as they could. Although there was enough food, they still had to save it. After dinner today, they watched a variety show as usual, and suddenly it started snowing outside. Her mother looked out the window and said, "It snowed really early this year." Her father scratched his head and brought out a thick quilt from the room. "There's already an insect plague, so what's the problem with snowing early?" Then he added, "She always feels a little cold today. Come, cover yourself with the quilt and read a book." As soon as the snow started, her mother turned off the TV. She knew from experience that the weather would soon become even more gloomy, and the solar panels would not be able to store electricity, so they would have to use it sparingly. Fortunately, her mother bought a lot of books. At least she had something to kill time. At this moment, she looked down at the book, Youth Mental Health and Popularization, in her hand and fell into deep thought. She couldn't help but ask, "Mom and Dad, she's not a teenager anymore, right? Do you still want to have another child?" Her mother immediately picked up a book and threw it at her head. "What are you thinking? I didn't pay attention when she bought the book. She just took it." It was the 31st day of the insect plague. It snowed for 3 days, and the entire ground was covered with thick snow. Her father drank water from his thermos cup and suddenly asked, "Do you think these insects will be frozen to death?" Obviously, freezing to death was impossible. The insects must have been buried under the thick snow. The weather was terribly cold, and as soon as the snow stopped, it froze into a thick layer of ice. Just as the snow stopped, the window on the 5th floor of the building across the street suddenly opened. The snow was so heavy that it actually covered the 3rd floor after freezing. The family opened the window and looked, and then 2 people jumped out of the window, wrapped so tightly that their gender could not be seen clearly. This is really daring, jumping directly from the 5th floor without checking the thickness of the ice. It seems that these 2 people must be experts in skating. Mom moved the main battlefield of playing poker from the sofa to the balcony. While playing cards, she kept an eye on when the 2 people would come back. It was almost lunchtime when the 2 men came back with bags of supplies. Although it was too high up to see what they had brought, judging from the large bags, there were quite a lot of supplies. It seemed that they had given the signal to go out and look for food. In the afternoon, many more people followed them out. Her heart was pounding, wondering what might happen next. Sure enough, at about 4 p.m., the ice suddenly cracked, causing some people outside to exclaim in surprise. The family had been out in the morning and wanted to go out again in the afternoon, but when the ice cracked, they quickly climbed out the window to go home. The ice was cracking very fast. She saw a man just walk downstairs when a crack appeared under his feet. "Wife, catch it." He threw 2 bags of supplies up and climbed up with his hands and feet. But unfortunately, his speed could not keep up with the speed of the ice cracking. After the ice completely cracked, tens of thousands of insects crawled out. The black and white insects attacked violently, and the crunching sound they made when gnawing at the ice surface was creepy. As soon as the man threw the supplies up, he was bitten by the bugs, and the bugs dragged him down tightly. "Husband." The woman reached out to pull him, but she couldn't pull him up. "Wife, you have to be fine." After saying that, the man was submerged by the bugs. Instantly, countless cries of pain erupted across the entire ice surface. There were at least 5 more people who were like that man. The snow was falling heavier, the ice was freezing faster, and the insects were eating it at a very fast speed. After the snow, she subconsciously felt that the bugs seemed to be different. It was not until the evening that she realized that the temperature was too cold during the day and even colder at night. These bugs usually dug holes to bury themselves, or they were afraid of the cold, but now it was different. At night, they were still active on the ground, still looking for food. She immediately told her mother and the others about this discovery. She was silent for a while before saying, that is to say, the extreme weather for her is a good time for these insects to evolve. This realization made them all silent. For the first time since the insect plague broke out, she asked a question, "Mom and Dad, can they really survive?" Her father looked at her and said firmly, "Yes. They have made a lot of preparations, they will definitely survive. Moreover, they have to trust the country. Although they cannot spare enough manpower to carry out a comprehensive rescue, you have to know that their country has strong perseverance. All they have to do is wait." After hearing what her father said, she suddenly felt relieved. Yes, why bother with so many meaningless things? On the 42nd day of the insect plague, the weather was still hot, and all the vegetables her mother had planted died, a tragic death. She touched the withered leaves and said to herself, yes, she planted them according to the steps. She couldn't help but remind her, "Mom, have you forgotten how cold it is now? People grow vegetables in such cold weather and still know to wrap them in military coats." As a result, Her mother started to nag as soon as she heard it. Why didn't you remind her? She could only helplessly answer. In fact, it was mainly because she just remembered it. These days, occasionally someone goes out in the community, dressed warmly, some even wearing protective clothing, as if they always think they can be safe by escaping into the car. However, she saw with her own eyes a family of 4, all wrapped in protective clothing. They were a couple with 2 children, but unfortunately they had not walked far when the insects surrounded them. Just as she was wondering whether the suits would protect against the bugs, she heard cries of pain and a child crying. Fortunately, they managed to drag the child to the car. Just when she was relieved for them, the car suddenly lost control and crashed into the green belt. Then, a group of dense insects crawled out of the car. She couldn't help but gasp when she saw this. Luckily, her father reacted calmly. Sisi, do you remember the hypothesis you proposed? Turning humans into mother bodies. It seems that they have turned into insects. Since the snow, the sun has not come out for a single day, and the solar panels have hardly stored any electricity. These days, they have been relying on alcohol blocks to heat up a small pot. After a few days of eating instant noodles, she suggested eating snail noodles, and the whole family agreed. The taste of snail noodles is very overbearing. They thought the doors and windows of their house were closed tightly, but just after finishing their meal, they heard someone outside shouting, "Who is eating snail noodles?" Her mother was startled when she heard the voice. This seems to be the Andy who danced square dance with her before. She once said that she came from the famine era, so the food stored at home can last for at least 2 years. Besides, eating a little bit will replenish your body. She couldn't help but sigh. This nose is really sharp. Fortunately, these insects are not sensitive to smell. These insects are really strange. They have no reaction to smell and light. The only thing they are highly sensitive to is flesh and blood. As long as a living thing appears in front of them, they will pounce on it and eat it. After dinner, her mother continued her planting business. This time she specially cut a military coat to keep them warm. The weather was really cold. When the solar panels could not provide enough electricity for the refrigerator, her mother began to worry whether the meat in the refrigerator would go bad. Looking at the recent weather, it was even colder outside than in the refrigerator. She originally wanted to make shredded pork noodles, but when she saw that the meat in the refrigerator was frozen into ice, she finally gave up. On the 50th day of the insect plague, the weather was still extremely cold. Fortunately, they had stockpiled a lot of hot packs, otherwise the weather would have been unbearable. The extremely cold weather helped the 3 of them develop good habits. For example, now, the 3 of them were curled up on the sofa reading, of course, wrapped in thick quilts. The only inconvenience was the problem of excretion, but fortunately, her mother bought a lot of cat litter early on. After each excretion, they threw the cat litter downstairs. Although this behavior may not be very moral, it is the end of the world now. Who cares about these things? Today, the drone appeared again, still dropping supplies to the top floor. Their family was not interested in these supplies, nor did they want to take the risk to get them. As they read, they began to feel sleepy, but in such cold weather, they could not rest outside even for sleep. So she picked up the telescope and went to the balcony to observe. After taking a look, she found something wrong. She immediately called her father over, and he also found something strange. She saw groups of insects carrying something and crawling into the open door of an apartment building. Countless insects crawled out from inside and went in and out. She just felt like ants moving house and could not see anything unusual. However, her father's expression suddenly changed, and he asked, "Oh no, do you remember where the big bug that group of people left behind went?" This question directly touched on her and her mother's blind spots, and they both shook their heads. Seeing that they didn't respond, her father sighed and said, "She suspects that the big bug has entered the apartment building. Now these bugs are looking for food for it. The big bug may be the king of all the bugs in this area." After listening to it, they finally understood, but this possibility was really scary. If the big bug continued to grow, all of them would be doomed. Moreover, there was another big bug that would appear in 2 years and needed to be dealt with. The family decided to discuss countermeasures, but in the end they did not come to any conclusion. The main reason was that these insects were not afraid of anything. Oh, except bullets and artillery fire, but they did not have these things. At first they thought of luring the bugs away, but later they found that this method was not reliable. The bugs were too fertile, and they seemed to grow bigger because they ate their own kind. If they lured them together, a bigger bug might appear, and they would be finished. This matter gave her family a headache, and they were really at a loss. It was the 57th day of the insect plague. The last time there was no conclusion about the insects, until the weather warmed up a little in the past few days. Her father saw a large pond in the distance through the telescope. They lead it to the big pond and freeze it. Her mother suggested, although this method sounds feasible, why can they think of it, but the country can't? These insects don't seem to be afraid of water. Her father hesitated. Don't worry about it. Just give it a try. Even if it doesn't work, at least we can lure that big bug away. She looked over there, and there was almost no one. Her father decided to take a risk. So they decided to use pork they bought at home to lure the bugs in. The problem was that the pork was frozen hard and needed to be slightly thawed with hot water before being attached to the drone. Her father controlled the drone to fly towards the apartment building and stayed inside for a while. As a result, a bunch of bugs followed, but the big bug was not seen. Could it be that the big bug is only interested in its own kind now? Her father proposed a hypothesis. She pondered for a moment, and suddenly an idea came to her. No, no, no. It is now in the role of the king. It does not need to do it itself. Let it a few more times, so that it can see but cannot eat. It should be able to be lured out. Sure enough, after 5 or 6 attempts, the big bug finally came out. It became a little bigger and more impatient. After seeing that the fresh meat could not be approached for a long time, it started to eat the small bugs following it, and then continued to chase the meat. Finally, her father successfully led the big bug into the water. There was a mobile phone tied to the drone, and after returning, the 3 of them gathered around the phone to watch the video. As a result, the scenes in the video made them feel sick. The densely packed insects in the water quickly pounced on the big insect. Once the big insect entered the water, the insects in the water began to besiege it. The whole scene was bloody and flesh flying everywhere, which was unbearable to watch. She finally figured out why they couldn't be led into the water. It turned out that the insects in the water and those on the land evolved in different directions, her father said. Water resources can't be wasted, and land resources can't be lost either. That's why the country has been dragging its feet until now and hasn't carried out a systematic rescue operation. After her father sighed, he continued, It's not that they didn't rescue them, they just didn't do it in a systematic way. Those big guys got help as soon as possible. After all, the country can't do without them. She was silent for a while, and felt that what he said made sense. It was the 63rd day of the insect plague, and the weather was still cold, but there was good news today. The vegetables her mother had planted were alive. Although they still looked half dead, it was still a development worth celebrating. Just as she was about to cook, she suddenly found a drone parked in front of her window, and it seemed to be carrying something. After seeing the previous incident of the convoy throwing big insects, they certainly would not easily accept such things. However, there was a note on this drone. Her mother took a closer look and found that it was sent by the square dance ant. The note read, Big sister, today is her birthday. I'll treat you to a bowl of noodles. Seeing this, she couldn't help but sigh. What a big heart this ant has. Although they didn't want to accept these things, they still accepted the noodles. After all, her mother made the decision and finally decided to put 2 bags of snail noodles for the drone to take away. The ant's surname was Yu, and she was a genuine warm-hearted person, even a little too kind. Originally, they thought that their family and her family had only interacted once, but the next day at noon, Aunt Yu sent them dried radish by drone again, with a note attached to explain how delicious her fried radish was. Her mother twitched her lips helplessly, took down the dried radish, and replaced it with 2 packs of noodles. On the 3rd day, Aunt Yu's drone came again, and this time it brought chili sauce. Her mother then gave her 3 packs of pickled mustard and a braised egg, and wrote a note asking her if she had anything to ask for. Sure enough, the drone flew back and soon flew back. The note read, Sister, do you have any medicine? Her grandson has a fever. Can you give them some fever-reducing medicine? She's exchanging something. Her mother was silent for a moment and asked her opinion. She thought for a moment and said, Give it to them, but give them a little less. Mom, if it's really just the 3 of them, they'll probably go crazy. So they put half a box of antipyretic medicine and a few packets of antipyretic granules in it. This time, the drone came back and delivered a piece of meat. In this end times of extreme scarcity of supplies, receiving a piece of meat is really a heavy thank you gift. This time, her mother decided not to put anything in it. The 72nd day of the insect plague. Aunt Yu's family seemed to be a wealthy family, with all kinds of supplies. Every time she asked what kind of business Aunt Yu's family was doing, today her mother finally remembered a few things. Her son seemed to be doing some kind of transport business. He would bring all kinds of things home, including mineral water, beverages, etc. I think so. She couldn't remember clearly. No, Mom, the houses in this area are not cheap. Are you sure her son is doing this? She was a little confused. Her father took a sip of hot water and said slowly, You don't understand this. Transportation is very profitable. Her mother was silent for a while, then added in a difficult way. Because her daughter-in-law's family is rich, very rich, but she fell in love with her son. She was stunned for a moment. So that's it. However, none of this matters. What matters is that the weather is still cold enough to make people irritable. Although there are hot packs at home, the cold weather always makes people feel bad. More importantly, Aunt Yu is so friendly that she sent a drone to deliver something again today. Wow. This time she brought an elementary school exercise book, the kind with red crosses all over it, along with a cell phone and 3 sausages. The note read, "Big sister, help me with a question. Use your phone to record it. Thank you, big sister." Her mother took the homework book and gave it to her directly. Good luck. Explaining problems to children is not an easy task. Although some math problems are simple for her, she cannot tell them the answers directly to make them clear. Instead, she needs to explain them patiently step by step. This gives her a headache, but after all, this is the end of the world, so she will try her best to help. On the 81st day of the insect plague, the cold still did not abate, and the insects on the ground were still flying in and out. In addition to eating, drinking, and sleeping, the rest of the time was to explain the questions to Aunt Yu's grandson, and the questions kept coming. I had just finished explaining the topic today and was about to put the drone back when I suddenly noticed a drone flying over from a distance, dropping supplies as usual. However, what was different today was that the drone did not leave immediately after dropping the supplies, but instead hovered in the air for about an hour or two, as if waiting for residents to take the supplies away. After an hour or two, the drone started to move and spread white powder. After spreading, the drones flashed a light before flying away. Did they make powder? She was a little confused. She couldn't answer this question. After the drone flew away, she put the drone back to Aunt Yu's house and put a bottle of yogurt in it. At night, the weather became even colder. The 3 of them huddled together and ate instant noodles. Believe her, this cold wave will soon pass, her father consoled her. By the way, they observed that the powder they spread in the afternoon turned into a shiny patch after it fell on the ground. The insects did not die after eating the powder, but they visibly stopped for a while. Since no large female insects were seen on the ground, they could not determine whether the powder was effective in inhibiting the reproduction of female insects. Although the powder only suppressed the insects' movements briefly, for them, even this brief period of calm was like the dawn of victory. However, the weather tonight was too cold, and her father was worried about something unexpected happening, so he insisted on being on duty in the living room. Unable to persuade him, she had to get out 2 more quilts and let him put on a heat pad. When she woke up, the weather was really getting hotter. This trend of heat made her think that maybe they would suddenly transition from a cold winter to a hot summer. On the 90th day of the insect outbreak, the weather was truly unpredictable. Winter was over and summer arrived immediately, and the heat was almost unbearable. In order to cope with the hot weather, they can only apply cooling patches and turn on the air conditioner every day. Fortunately, the arrival of summer brought sunny weather, and the power problem no longer bothered them. After all, there were so many bugs outside that no one dared to approach. She thinks that there should be more people who survive this insect apocalypse than those who survive the zombies. Her father's words made her nod. In fact, she and her mother felt the same way. The government arranges drones to drop supplies every few days. In addition, these insects do not cause serious damage to buildings, so it is safer to stay at home. Although life is difficult, there is a lack of water and electricity. Although there is water in the supplies dropped by drones occasionally, the water is only enough to drink. Despite this, the situation outside is still grim. They have been sending out drones to check and found that almost all rivers outside are invaded by insects, and water resources have been seriously polluted. However, it is comforting that the powder developed by the country is getting more and more effective, and she believes that the insects will be completely eliminated soon. But today, they found a big bug in the community. There were too many bugs in the community. Just like raising poisonous insects, as time went by, big bugs would appear, and the big bugs would continue to breed bigger bugs. Insects can really be born anywhere and at any time. I once accidentally saw the birth of a group of insects. The scene was really disgusting and pitch black. They didn't know when this big bug appeared. They only knew that it was already very big when it appeared in their sight, almost as big as a Tibetan Mastiff. According to her father's estimation, the insects in the place where the insect plague first broke out should be as big as a cow. The problem now is that this big insect is too fertile. It eats everything and reproduces insects as soon as it eats. Is the mission of these insects to reproduce insects continuously? She couldn't help but speculate. Although she couldn't confirm it, she really felt that this guess might be true. However, they had no way to verify it now and could only watch the insect plague spread. The 97th day of the insect plague. Teaching children to do exercises is really a physical job. Aunt Yu has everything, from the 3rd grade exercises at the beginning to the 4th grade exercises now. She tactfully told Aunt Yu that her grandson had not systematically studied the 4th grade knowledge points, so it might not be good to do exercises like this. As a result, Aunt Yu directly sent 5 eggs and said carelessly, "It doesn't matter. This is how children learn nowadays. After the insect plague is over, if he doesn't work hard, he will not be able to keep up with the progress." She deeply felt the horror of involution, but at the same time she resigned herself to continue explaining the questions to her children. Today, the drone came to drop supplies again. As usual, after dropping the supplies, the drone began to spread the powder. However, today, after spreading the powder, the drone did not leave as usual, but instead hovered in the air. Immediately afterwards, dozens of drones locked onto the giant bug, and then a sudden alarm rang throughout the community, making her ears hurt. But after a while, the sound of an engine was heard in the distance, and 2 modified vehicles suddenly drove into the community. As soon as the car stopped, 2 teams of people quickly got out of the car. They are wearing protective clothing and carrying guns. Although their faces cannot be seen, it can be judged from their standing posture that they are soldiers. The soldiers walked and sprinkled the powder, quickly approaching the position of the big insect. Then, gunshots rang out, and they fired at full force, but the big insect was incredibly strong, and it took a long time to completely kill it. Afterwards, they took out a container and put the giant insect's body in it, apparently intending to take it back for research. At this time, Aunt Yu suddenly opened the window and shouted loudly, "When will the national rescue come?" The soldiers stopped, and one of them said, "Dear residents, the country has been rescuing people and has never given up on you. But as you can see, these bugs are invulnerable, especially these big bugs, which have even started to eat buildings. According to experts' research, these insects are extremely sensitive to human flesh and blood, so they cannot gather everyone together, otherwise it will attract a tide of insects. But please rest assured, scientists are working hard. Please give them some time. They will definitely bring peace and prosperity to the country again." After saying that, the soldiers quickly evacuated, and after they left, the drones also left. "See? The protective suits on those soldiers are all shiny," her father said thoughtfully. "She probably soaked them in medicine powder." She couldn't help asking, "Why not just clean up all the bugs?" As a result, her mother rolled her eyes and said, "Are you stupid? Did you see how many bullets it took to kill a bug? Think about it. These bugs eat almost everything, so will they eat those strategic materials?" She immediately reacted, "That's right." Although the appearance of the soldiers did not bring hope of clearing the bugs immediately, their arrival at least allowed them to see the possibilities for the future. The 109th day of the insect plague. The weather was so hot that everyone felt like they had been fished out of water. They have to take a shower when the weather gets hot, but it doesn't rain in this horrible weather. Even if it rains, they dare not collect rainwater to boil for bathing, because who knows if there will be anything unclean in the rainwater. There was a lot of water stored at home, but it was definitely not enough for bathing. So, I could only boil a little water to wipe my body each time. The weather is too hot, and I can't sleep at night even if I turn on the air conditioner. But I dare not turn on the air conditioner all the time. In case it breaks down, there will be no air conditioner repairman who can come to my house to fix it. Every day, they could only stick cooling stickers everywhere, sit on bamboo mats, turn on fans, put water in the freezer, and then take it out to cool down. They also started drinking mung bean soup early. After knowing that Aunt Yu didn't have mung beans, her mother sent a bag of mung beans to her, and also sent Huaxiang Zhengqi water and a few bags of cooling stickers. Life in the end times is not easy. People's hearts are sometimes up and sometimes down, and they can't stand too much scrutiny. They can't save others, nor can they be saviors, but Aunt Yu's family has shown kindness to them, so they will respond to this kindness. The 123rd day of the insect plague. This morning, the weather turned gloomy, and the insects on the ground ate the soil frantically and then scattered. "It's going to rain," her father said. As expected, it started to rain heavily in the afternoon. It was raining so hard that it seemed as if there was a hole in the sky, and water kept pouring down. After dinner, the rain was still falling, and there was no sign of it stopping. In such a heavy rain, some of the insects floated on the water, still eating whatever they saw, while most of the insects began to kill each other. They seemed to always have to eat, and if there was no food around, they would start to eat their own kind. The heavy rain made the family unable to sleep. Her mother took out a few bags of potato chips and spicy strips and said, "Since you all don't want to sleep, let's watch it together." The rain continued to fall until the second half of the night. My parents could not bear it anymore and were finally driven to bed by her. The next morning, the water outside surged like a tsunami. The water had risen to the height of a building, and the water was full of insects. The glass was broken by the water, and the water flow brought the insects into the house. "Is this rain specifically to help these insects find food?" her mother asked worriedly. They were anxious and waiting for the country's action. In the afternoon, it was still raining, but a helicopter flew in the sky. The helicopter kept sprinkling white and blue powders on the water. Because of the heavy rain, their vision was blocked and they could not see whether the powders were effective against the bugs. But now that the country has begun to act, they also believe that they should have conducted experiments. After all, the actions of the country are usually carefully planned.